Hello, dear children. I welcome you to today's radio learning program, which is produced by REB with support from UNICEF. This is your teacher, Mary. I'll be teaching you social studies for people. So, children, are you ready for today's lesson? People learners, are you ready? So, you need to get out your notebooks and pens because you will need them to write down some questions and activities that I will be giving you. And our dear parents, I continue to encourage you to support our children as they learn through this program. And I appreciate you so much for supporting us. So, children, do you recall what we learned in the last lesson? What did we learn in the last lesson? Okay, so this is what we learned. We learned about flora and fauna. Flora are all the plants that grow in an area. Fauna are all the animals in an area. Okay, that is what we learned about. Can we have a short break and we continue?
Come along and play with us.
Welcome back, children. Today, we are going to learn about population census. Can you all say that? Population census. So you will find this topic on page 82 and 83 in the P4 SST textbook. You can open on page 82 and 83 in the P4 SST textbook. And there are so many pictures on that page. And they talk about population census. So, the objectives of today's lesson, you will be able to define population first. You will also be able to define population census. You will also be able to identify the effects of overpopulation in an area. Those are the objectives of today's lesson. So, children, can you all stand up for a warm-up? Okay, let us sing together. And put your hands together, clap, and sing. Okay, this is how the warm-up goes. And sing with me. I like studying. I like studying. I like studying. I like studying. In the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, in the morning, Can we all sing together? Okay. I like studying. I like studying. I like studying. I like studying. In the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, in the morning, Well done, children. Can you sit down? Okay. So I said today we are going to learn about population and population census. So what is population? What do you understand by population? Okay, this is what population is. Population is the number of people who live in an area. As simple as that. Population is the number of people who live in an area. And the population of Rwanda is the number of people who live in Rwanda. So children, do you know the population of Rwanda? How many people are in Rwanda? Okay, you need to ask your parents and they tell you the number of people in Rwanda. So population is the number of people who live in an area. So now what is population census? What is population census? Population census is when the government gathers information about people who live in a country. And a population census is a survey or it is a poll. So they do this at specific time. Population census is done at a specific time and they include all the people in a country. It is the government that chooses to do a population either after 5 years or after 3 years. So they choose to do a population census after a specific time. Now, we need to know what information do they gather when they are doing population census. What information do we get when we carry out population census? So this is what they always get when they carry out a population census. They always find out how many people live in Rwanda. That is one. Number two, they always find out how the population changes. That means how many people have come out of the country or how many people have entered the country. Population census also helps people get to know how many are born and those that have died in the country. So whenever they carry out a population census, they get to know how many people are born and those that have died in the country. So also population census tells us how many women, men are in the country. How many women and men are in the country? How old or young people are there? How many old people or young people are in a country? Where do people live? And which areas have more or less people and what they do. More so, when population census is carried out, they get to know what education people have, how many schools are in each area and the number of children that go to school. They get to know how healthy or sick people are. They also get to know how many hospitals are in an area, and they get to know how many people are poor or rich. So there's a lot of information that is gathered whenever they carry out a population census. Like I've said, so many things. They get to know how many women and men are in a country, where people live, what do people do, who are born, how many people have died, the people that have entered in the country, those that have come out of the country, where do people live, how many schools are in an area, or how many hospitals are in an area, or what do people have? Are they poor? Are they rich? What education do people have? Have they studied or have not they studied? So population census is very important because they will get to know the people that are living in the country, all the information about the people, and it will help the country to plan for the future. Let us have a short break and we continue.
Come along and play with us.
Welcome back, children. Now, what is the importance of population census? As I already said, population census is important. So there are so many other importances of having a population census. Why should we count the number of people in an area? Why should they know their schools? Why should they know how many hospitals are in an area? A census gives information on the socio-economic conditions of the people. It is able to give information how people are living, how people are working, their standard of living, and the money they have, and the conditions of living. So this helps the government to be able to organize how to employ more people. They are able to know where more employment is needed, and they can set up infrastructure or institutions that will help people to get more employment. And whenever information is got about the population, the government will also be able to know the needs of the poor people. They will get to know the poor people in an area, and they specify the needs that they have and they do it for them. And also the government will get to know how many schools are in an area and which areas need more schools. If the government gets to know that a certain area has less schools and yet there are so many children in that area, the government will be able to put up schools since it has identified that information. So lastly, population census, it will help the government to get to know how to make the budget. The government will get to know how much money is needed for people to use. So in carrying out a population census, the government will be able to plan so many things for the area and also for the whole country. They set up infrastructure, they build schools, they set up so many institutions for people to get employment. People are able to get different kinds of things to do. People get help where there is need. And all that is done because they have carried out a population census. So the census tells us how many people live in each district. Then the government can see if each district has what it needs for the people who live there. Now we need to understand population control. Let us understand what population control is. What is population control? You already know population is the number of people who live in an area. What about population control? So population control means to make sure the right number of people live in an area, and which is done by controlling the population. They make sure a right number of people lives in an area, and it is done by controlling the population. It can be a problem, children, if too many people are living in an area. If too many people are living in an area, it is a very big problem. And if there are few people living in an area, it is also a big problem. So it is important to control the population of an area. Okay, there are instances where the area has few people, and that we call it underpopulation or low population. Underpopulation or low population means there are not enough people living in an area. Low population always happens when people move out of an area. For example, many people move to a city away from rural areas. People always leave the villages and they come to the city. People do this because maybe they want jobs. They are looking for better conditions of living. You know, they will always leave the villages to go and settle in cities. So the places where they have left, for example, the villages, it will always have low population. There will be very few people in that area because people have left that area. And that is when the government comes in to control the population. And we shall look at how the government can handle low population. So what about overpopulation? Overpopulation now, it is the opposite of low population. So overpopulation or high population means there are too many people living in an area or space. Overpopulation means there are too many people living in an area. So high population happens when people move to areas that have better services or with many opportunities. For example, people move to town to look for jobs, and we always find areas in towns which are overpopulated, areas which have so many people who have settled there because they are looking for better services. They want to have jobs. They want to have good hospitals. They want to have good schools where they can educate their children. You know, they want to have good means of transport. So people will leave villages and they settle in town. And we shall find towns when they are overpopulated because people have migrated there. Let us have a short break and we continue.
Come along and play with us.
Welcome back, children. So we need to know that overpopulation and underpopulation always has effects. So what are those effects of overpopulation and underpopulation? What are the effects? Can you think about them? Okay, so let me share with you the effects. So when many people occupy an area, there will be competition of resources. Whenever people are so many in an area, there will be competition of resources, and this will make resources less. And we shall find people who are starving because there isn't enough food. There are many people in an area, and people will end up competing for the little food which is there, and people will starve. That is point number one. Point number two, people can live in the street because there are not enough houses. If people all overcrowd a city, they will not have enough houses. They are competing for the houses which are in the city. And people will end up living on the street. That is the case where we find many street children or many street people because they don't have where to live. And also, children may stay away from school because there are not enough schools. You find children are competing for the schools in the city because there are few schools and the children have migrated from villages to cities, and the cities are overpopulated, and children will not be able to go to schools since their schools are not enough. So, when there are too many people, there will also be lack of enough water for everyone. And remember, children, we cannot live without water. So you find people are competing for water. And more so, another point and effect of overpopulation, there can be easy spread of diseases. When people live close to each other, they can easily contract diseases because they are congested, and whoever is sick can affect all the people around there. So there can be easy spread of diseases. Another point, overpopulation has a bad effect on the environment. Too many trees are chopped down for firewood, and yet we need trees since they act as windbreakers. So people will cut down the trees so as to build houses for settlement. And yet we all need trees because they act as windbreakers. They also act as shelter. So lastly, too much land can be used for farming and settlement, and we may end up not having enough land for national parks for wildlife. If there isn't enough land, we shall not have land for where animals can settle or stay. So we shall find there is destruction of wild animals due to overpopulation. So let us look at how we can control the population. How can we control the population? So now, if there are few people in a district, we can provide means of enabling the people to live in that district, such as creating employment opportunities or constructing good schools and roads. Because remember, people leave villages for better services in the cities. But if you make the village a comfortable place and it has good services, people will be settled in villages. So if there are too many people in a district, we can also educate people about the benefits of having only 2 children per family. Let people practice family planning so that they don't produce many children. And also ensure people know how to plan for the pregnancy and the future. They need to always practice family planning and ask people to move to less populated districts. Let people be able to move to less populated districts so as to avoid overpopulation in a particular district. So we have come to a conclusion of our lesson. So in summary, we have learnt about the meaning of population. And population is the number of people who live in an area. We have also learnt about population census, which is when the government gathers information about the people who live in a country. We learned about the importance of population census, and we also looked at underpopulation and overpopulation. Under or low population, or over and high population. So for your homework, you need to research. Now, research about the year that the last population census was carried out in Rwanda. Find out which year was it done. And also find out the population of Rwanda. How many people live in Rwanda? So thank you so much, children, for paying attention. And even our parents, thank you so much for supporting our children. I hope you'll join me in the next lesson. Bye-bye.